stabilising policy, as you refer to them, would look like? What does Australia need?
Well, it actually needs to be very clear with industry, particularly in the electricity sector, about how quickly polluting assets need to be withdrawn from the system. Because if you set that, then you know when those assets are going to have to wind out of the system, and then you can start to invest to replace those assets with clean assets. We're still missing the long-term trajectory of reducing emissions that the government needs to put in place and will have to ultimately put in place if we are going to even replace those assets, but let alone replace them in a way which is consistent with the urgent climate science which is set out before. And Joe, it's really important that people understand there's a whole variety of different views coming into how quickly we have to do that. And it was only just after the conference in Poland where the largest investor group in the world with $32 trillion worth of assets has come out and said, we are in a very urgent situation with regards to increasing emissions. They are calling for all OECD countries to remove all coal-fired generation by 2030. Now that is very, very fast, but clearly these assets are going to have to be replaced, and what we need to do is we need to make sure that the policies are in place so that people can start building and investing in the new assets that need to be built today so they're ready when we have to take these out.
That's UBC Renewables and Smart Energy Council Director Oliver Yates speaking there to Joe O'Brien. Good afternoon, I'm Glenn Bartholomew on this Friday the 21st of December 2018 Eastern Daylight Time, now 4 o'clock, 3:30 in South Australia and 3 o'clock Queensland time. In the Northern Territory that's 2:30 WA 1 p.m.
ABC News.
Making news this hour, sacked Northern Territory Minister Ken Bowles says his removal from caucus, along with 2 other government members, is a, quote, bloody disgrace. Mr Bowles has bloody portfolios, including Aboriginal affairs and primary industries and resources, by Chief Minister Michael Gunner. It comes after public criticism by Mr Bowles, Assistant Minister Jeff Collins and backbencher Scott McConnell of the Chief Minister and of the government's handling of the budget crisis revealed last week. Mr Bowles says Jeff Collins was informed of the Chief Minister's motion in a caucus phone call at lunchtime.
I was voted on to kick myself out, to kick Jeff out, and to kick Scott McConnell out. I think this is an absolute bloody disgrace. You don't have that choice. The people who elected us have that choice.
Federal Nationals leader Michael McCormack says he has spoken to the politician accused of visiting parts of Southeast Asia known for prostitution and drugs. News Corp Australia revealed that the Australian Federal Police launched inquiries after being tipped off by Australia's financial spy agency Austrac about the federal politician's banking transactions. The AFP finished its work earlier this year without laying any charges. The police are reportedly concerned about the risk of the individual being blackmailed. McCormack says he's discussed the matter with the person.
Yes, but again I say, the Australian Federal Police has looked into the matter and found no case to answer.
Climate change experts have described the government's insistence that Australia will meet its Paris 2020 commitment as misleading. The government is committed to reducing emissions by 26% on the 2005 levels by 2030, but the latest figures predict Australia will only reduce its carbon emissions by 7%, well short of that target. The Environment Minister Melissa Price insists the government will still meet the Paris commitment. Australian National University's Frank Kelso says that won't happen without policy change.
We knew that the government committed to Australia say that we are in fact committing to not 30 miles
controversial border wall, a move that pushes the US government closer to a partial shutdown. The House voted 217 to 185, largely along party lines. The bill now goes to the Senate, where it has almost no chance of passing. Senators have already passed their bill to stop a shutdown by extending funding to the 8th of February, but that bill doesn't include funding the border wall. Without a resolution between the two houses of Congress, government funding for various departments will expire at midnight on Friday. Japanese prosecutors have served a new arrest warrant on Carlos Ghosn, the former chairman of the Nissan Motor Company. He was sacked after being charged with under-reporting his pay package over a number of years and has already spent more than a month in prison. Yesterday, a court in Tokyo ordered his release on bail, and there were reports he could be freed as early as today. But now, authorities have ordered his rearrest on new charges of aggravated breach of trust. Mr. Ghosn says he'll fight in court to restore his good name. Christmas travel plans have been delayed for Australians around the world after a global passport shutdown earlier this morning. Check-in services were briefly disrupted for all passengers using an Australian passport. A Melbourne airport spokesman says it lasted 20 minutes but has had a flow-on effect, causing longer queues at airports around the country and delaying passengers checking in at overseas terminals. This passenger, Michael, is travelling to Vietnam and says he barely moved in over an hour.
There were a lot of people waiting, and there were a lot of flights to be going out of Melbourne and other airports around Australia this morning. There wasn't the banging of bags and things going down the chutes. People were just talking quietly, and it was really quite odd. Nobody really knew what was going on.
A Tamil asylum seeker family who made their home in central Queensland has lost the latest appeal in their long-running legal battle against the deportation order they have Clark appeals.
Priya and Nardes fled civil unrest in Sri Lanka. They arrived in Australia several years ago and settled in Villanueva. They had two Australian-born daughters. The family was placed in immigration detention in Melbourne in March after a bridging visa expired. The local community has been lobbying on their behalf. The team in Melbourne today dismissed the latest legal appeal against their deportation. Justice John Middleton, however, moved the Home Affairs Office can't act on the ruling before the 1st of February.
Mother of a 9-week-old baby whose body was found in suburban Adelaide earlier this month has now been charged with murder. Police and ambulance crews were called to Woodville in Adelaide's northwest on December 5 after receiving reports of an unresponsive baby. Despite the efforts of paramedics, the baby was pronounced dead at the scene. The mother, a 40-year-old woman from Woodville, will face a bedside court hearing this afternoon at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, where she's been detained under the Mental Health Act. Police have not said what gender the baby was or where the baby was found. Emergency services are warning people not to swim at unpatrolled beaches following the death of a tourist on the New South Wales coast. Paramedics were called to Mooney Beach near El Saba just after 12 o'clock today, following reports a man was missing in the water. Witnesses called the 60-year-old Swiss national who observed and tried to revive him, but he died at the scene. The incident follows 3 drownings at the same beach on Monday night. New South Wales Ambulance Inspector Nick Nair says 4 deaths in 1 week is tragic.
Very tragic occurrence here, but all local police are swimming at controlled beaches. And it's the only place we've been for in a week now. That's very, very tragic. Controlled beaches are where the safe beaches are. If it's not controlled, basically you should not be swimming there.
Police and the State Emergency Service are searching walking tracks in Tasmania's southwest for a missing bushwalker. Here's Carla Howard.
76-year-old James Clay hasn't been seen since the 12th of November when he left for a month-long hike along the Huon track. Police say the Flinders Island man didn't reach his food drop in Melaleuca and is more than a week overdue from the track. Search teams and a rescue helicopter are scouring a number of walking tracks in the area. Police say Mr. McLean is an experienced bushwalker and has previously completed walks in the region.
A cat found tied up inside a bag at Upper Car Park has been reunited with its owner. a look at the weather for you. In Brisbane, you're sitting on 33 degrees, perhaps not as severe as first feared, a top of 36 rather than 38 on the way today. And a hot one, though, possibly a late storm moving in. Certainly happened in Sydney last night. Today, just showers forecast for Sydney. It's 23. Canberra on 21 and showers developing. And looking at Melbourne, where it's 17, showers and a possible storm, the outlook. A light shower or two in Hobart. It's on 15 degrees currently. And in Adelaide, 22 right now. That's your forecast top on a partly cloudy day. And Darwin on 32, maybe a shower or storm around today. Past 4 Eastern Daylight Time, 3:45 for you listening in Adelaide. In the north, Brisbane, 3:15 and 2:45 in Darwin. Perth, 1:15.
ABC News headlines.
3 Northern Territory government members have been sacked from the Labor caucus. It comes after public criticism by the 3 this week of Labor's handling of the Territory's troubled budget. China's foreign ministry has rejected claims by the US and other nations accusing Beijing of economic espionage and cyber hacking. The foreign ministry says China's never participated in or supported any stealing of commercial secrets. And Christmas travel plans have been delayed for Australians around the world after a global passport shutdown earlier this morning. Check-in services were briefly disrupted for all passengers using an Australian passport. Another day, another departure. US Defense Secretary Jim Mattis has suddenly quit after a falling out with President Donald Trump over his foreign policies. It comes just a day after Mr. Trump disregarded top advisors and decided to pull US troops out of Syria. Well, Thomas Countryman is a former US Undersecretary for Arms Control and International Security Affairs. And let's find out what he's made of the latest move by President Trump in the United States.
I wish I could tell you that there was a silver lining behind the bad news about Secretary Mattis's departure at the end of February, but I can only see dark clouds. Secretary Mattis was a restraining influence on some of President Trump's most misguided notions in foreign policy and security policy. And while there may be qualified people to replace him, the tradition in the Trump administration so far has been to appoint only people who are not only yes men, but hell yes men. People who will line up with the president's statements regardless of whether they make sense for the country. And if we get someone, for example, from the Republicans in the Congress who've been utterly supine in front of the president's policy pronouncements, I think we will no longer have that restraining influence.
Now, we've also heard that some 7,000 troops are also looking to be withdrawn from Afghanistan. Of course, we note that Mr. Mattis's decision to resign came off the back of the announcement that the US would be pulling troops out of Syria. What do you make of this latest announcement regarding Afghanistan?
I don't know if the announcement regarding Afghanistan is yet official. It does reflect the president's priority, which he stated clearly during his campaign, to bring home troops from conflicts where U.S. interests are not immediately threatened. However, it also comes in the face of contrary advice from his Secretary of Defense and his Secretary of State. And I think it is exactly that Secretary Mattis, as a man with very deep principles and a sense of honor, after promising some U.S. allies in Syria that the U.S. would not abandon them, and after failing to convince President Trump to change his mind, felt he had no choice except to leave. Whether we'll see the same scenario in Afghanistan, a decision made only by the president without the benefit of input or consideration of the arguments of the Defense Department and the State Department, I'm just not sure yet.
So, Mr. Countryman, when this announcement was made by James Mattis, he said that he saw that the Trump administration would need to appoint someone whose views aligned more closely to the president. Do you have any idea of who that might be?
No, I think that it is first interesting that Secretary Mattis resigned, although the president chose to characterize it as a retirement. And I've never seen a retirement letter in which the disagreements with the president were so explicitly spelled out. The disparaging of allies, the failure to take seriously both the nuclear and conventional threat from Russia and from China. Whether there, as I said before, there are other good people who could replace him, but it is far more likely that the president will look for somebody who will not ever question him. Recall that was the change made earlier this year when Secretary of State Tillerson was replaced by the consummate yes man, Michael Pompeo.
And what will these decisions regarding Syria and now the news about Afghanistan, US troops being withdrawn, where will that leave military alliances with nations such as Australia?
I think it's very important that the first point Secretary Mattis stressed in his resignation letter was the importance of alliances, of the United States showing respect for allies and of showing leadership in the world. And these are precisely the areas where Mr. Trump has not just departed from, but reversed long-standing United States practice. I think Secretary Mattis has been effective in reassuring allies in Europe, in Asia, in the Pacific, that the alliance remains strong. Whether there will be a new person who will have the same point of view and will perform that same function as Secretary Mattis, I find doubtful.
Thomas Countryman, former US Undersecretary for Arms Control and International Security Affairs, speaking to Miriam Corriwer. Well, despite having the world's toughest approach to cigarettes, more than 15% of Australian adults still smoke. Ahead of any potential New Year resolutions to try and quit, this week saw the launch of the Switch to Vaping campaign. It's an initiative of the Australian Tobacco Harm Reduction Association, which was set up by doctors to encourage adult tobacco smokers who can't or won't quit to switch to vaping instead. The chair of the association is Colin Mendelson, a tobacco treatment specialist from the School of Public Health and Community Medicine at the University of New South Wales, and he joins us now. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Glenn.
When I spoke to you last year, the number of people lighting up had increased for the first time since anti-smoking campaigns were introduced. I think it took the number of smokers here to 2.4 million and meant we had a higher smoking rate than the United States. Do you know where we stand now?
Well, what we certainly know is that smoking rates are not falling in Australia. So from 2013, our national and state surveys have shown that the national smoking rates have plateaued. And in fact, in New South Wales and South Australia, the state surveys have shown a significant increase in smoking.
I think there are about 15,000 annual deaths from tobacco-related disease. That's more than from alcohol and illicit drugs combined. Is that why you say the time has come to try some new approaches?
Yeah, look, it's the single biggest preventable cause of death in Australia. It's actually 19,000 Australians who die prematurely each year from tobacco. 2 out of 3 smokers will die from tobacco. And look, most smokers want to quit and they try repeatedly, but the problem is that most attempts are unsuccessful. And look, it's great that people will be trying over the new year to quit, but we know most of those quit attempts will fail. And we just want people to know that there are alternatives. And if smokers switch to vaping, we know they'll feel better. We know that they'll be getting a lot less harm from what they're inhaling, and of course it'll save them a lot of money.
You described a degree of hostility to e-cigarettes and vaping here. What are the rules around e-cigarettes in Australia?
Yes, there's a lot of hostility in Australia, but not overseas, and that's really interesting. Look, it's legal to vape in Australia, but you do need a prescription from a doctor for nicotine. And with a prescription, then there's no problem with importing nicotine, with purchasing it from a compounding pharmacy and using it legally. And that's the situation in the UK, in New Zealand, in the US, in all the countries of the European Union. E-cigarettes are still freely available. In Australia, we're still quite backward, more and more out of step with the rest of the world.
You say the evidence is clear about the benefits of moving to vaping. What are they?
Look, the benefits are huge. I mean, most of the harm from smoking is caused by burning tobacco. So when you burn tobacco, you release 7,000 chemicals, toxins, carcinogens, poisonous gases. With vaping, you heat a liquid solution, so you're releasing nicotine into the atmosphere. There is only a fraction of the chemicals, and according to the Royal College of Physicians, the risks from vaping are less than 5% that of smoking, and probably a lot less.
It's not entirely risk-free though, is it?
It's not entirely risk-free. We don't recommend it to non-smokers. But if you're a smoker who switches to vaping, you'll substantially reduce your risk of smoking-related disease and save a lot of money, which is pretty important at this time of year.
Quite a bit of concern in recent days around the number of young Americans vaping. What should be done about that?
Yeah, look, this concern has been raised. Look, it's a genuine concern, but I really think it's an overreaction. The reality is that most vaping by young people is occasional, so it's once or twice a month. And regular use is uncommon, unless, except in smokers. It's certainly uncommon in non-smokers. But what's the most important thing here is that the smoking in young people has been dropping over the years, but since vaping became farmable, the rate of decline has tripled in the US. And so they have the lowest smoking rate in young people they've ever had. And I think from a public health point of view, that is the key public health issue. And I think what we think is happening is that vaping is diverting young people who would have become smokers to vaping, which is much less harmful. So I think overall, it could well be a very positive thing.
And they don't go from vaping to smoking? They don't go the other way?
There's no there's no evidence for that. They certainly go from smoking to vaping, but there's no evidence that kids who wouldn't have smoked go on to vape, become addicted, and then become vapers. We don't have proof of that in the UK or in the US.
So give some e-cigarettes to someone for Christmas if they can't give up smoking, and wish them luck in the new year.
Absolutely.
Colin, thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Greg.
Colin Mendelsohn, who's the chair of the Australian Tobacco Harm Reduction Association, is also at the School of Public Health at the University of New South Wales. Time for us to check the health of the markets, and they've been a bit ill lately. Let's see if today is any exception. Fiona Clark knows the answer. She's an investment strategist at Merrick's Capital. Fiona, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Looks like another bad day.
It has been another bad day for the market. The ASX 200 did start the day a little bit higher. It was up 37 at one point, but we've had a very volatile day with a 120-point trading range. With the ASX 200 down 79 points at one stage. We closed off the low, so that's quite positive. Down 38 points, but it was generally a very negative day. All around the banks in particular, leading the market lower. ANZ, NAB and Westpac all down over more than 1%. CBA down 0.6%. The materials and energy sector, though, we did see some strength there with BHP up 2.3% at $33.36, and Rio also up 0.7% and Woodside up 0.8%, but overall not such a great day.
What's making news?
There wasn't a huge amount of news as things quietened down. Healthscope, though, today shares were up 5.8% to $2.18 after it gave a positive update on the takeover offers that are underway for both BGH and Australian Super Consortium there, and also Brookfield Capital Partners. So shares were higher, but most of the market news focused on the hailstorms in Sydney with that catastrophe there. We saw updates from both Suncorp and IAG talking about the impact of the storms on their profit. So IAG said that there would be a cost of around about $169 million. Suncorp saying it was too early to say, but they were the major stories today. IAG shares were down 4.3% at $11.65, and Suncorp shares closed out 3.9% to $12.42.
As you say, things are quietening down. We're still waiting for the Santa Claus rally. It looks like it's delayed in traffic, but what does happen next week?
Well, again, it's yes, we are waiting. I'm not so sure he's forgotten that, but maybe we haven't been so nice this year.
Been a bit naughty.
We've been a bit naughty. It is a short trading week for us. The market closes early at 2 o'clock on Monday. We're also closed Tuesday, clearly, and there's not a lot on the economic front, so not much driving markets. There will be continued focus on the things that have been worrying investors over the last few days, which includes the trade situation or relationship between China and the US, the impact of Brexit on European and UK growth, and also the Federal Reserve in the US with the rate rise there and talk of 2 more next year. So that'll be the main focus on market lines.
Some of the major themes of the year, really. What about the Australian dollar?
Aussie dollar's a little bit weaker at 71.08 US cents. That's down from 71.74 cents last week. And looking ahead, the US market does look like it's going to open lower tonight. Futures are down about 10 points.
Have a good weekend, Fiona, and keep an eye out for Santa. From Merrick's Capital, Fiona Clark reporting on another down day on the share market. Good afternoon. It is 4:30 Eastern Daylight Time, 4 o'clock in Adelaide. Brisbane at 3:30, Darwin 3 o'clock, and time in Perth is now 1:30.
ABC News.
Three Northern Territory government members have been sacked from the Labor caucus. Aboriginal Affairs and Resources Minister Ken Bowles has been stripped of his portfolios, while Assistant Minister Jeff Collins and backbencher Scott McConnell have also been booted from caucus. It comes after public criticism by the three MLAs this week of Labor's handling of the troubled Territory's budget. A damning audit released on Friday last week showed the Territory budget was in a major structural deficit. The federal government has confirmed that it is willing to use emissions credits from beating the Kyoto Agreement to help achieve Australia's 2030 target. Australia is expected to reduce carbon emissions by 2020 by more than its pledge, but new data shows it's off track for its 2030 target under the Paris Agreement. The coalition has today announced it is open to rolling over the so-called emissions credits to help meet Australia's 2030 target. Despite the official projections, the Environment Minister, Melissa Price, says she's confident the Paris targets will be met and the credits won't be needed anyway.
Frankly, we put it into our releases and with respect to our information, but it's there more for information. You know, I don't believe that we'll be relying upon that at all, but it's there just for completeness.
The Prime Minister's office has labelled allegations a federal government MP has been visiting parts of Southeast Asia known for prostitution and drugs as discredited. From Parliament House, here's Matthew Doran.
News Corp Australia reports the Australian Federal Police launched inquiries into the MP because of their travel and suggestions they sent money to multiple bank accounts in the region. Despite investigators finishing their work earlier this year and not laying charges, police are reportedly concerned about the risk of the politician being blackmailed. The Prime Minister's office has issued a statement saying a Labor frontbencher made an allegation and has been discredited and dismissed by police.
Federal Labor MP Emma Hassar has had a small win during the first preliminary hearing in her defamation case against BuzzFeed. Kathleen Caldwell reports.
Federal Labor MP Emma Hassar is suing BuzzFeed for defamation after they published allegations of harassment and misconduct, including lewd sexual behaviour. An internal party investigation later dismissed the most serious allegations. Today in the federal court, BuzzFeed's barrister Tim Senior argued to strike off one of Ms Hassar's claims that the article implied she was a slut, as the word was never used by BuzzFeed. But Justice Stephen Ray said it could be inferred by the story and would not dismiss the claim. Outside court, Ms Hassar wouldn't comment on the decision.
It would be entirely inappropriate for me to make any commentary.
It will be back in court next year.
China says statements by Australia, the US and several other nations condemning alleged Chinese government hacking is vilification that harms relations. Here's China correspondent Phil Burgess.
Australia has joined the US, Britain, Canada, New Zealand and Japan in condemning alleged hacking carried out in coordination with China's government. US officials have symbolically charged 2 Chinese nationals and outlined their role in allegedly stealing commercial secrets from 45 American companies plus the military. Australia's Foreign Minister Maurice Payne says Australian companies were among those targeted in the global hacking campaign. In response, China's Foreign Ministry calls the allegations completely fictitious and has urged Australia and others to stop deliberately slandering China. Bill Birtles, ABC News, Beijing.
Senior US Republican Senator Lindsey Graham is urging President Donald Trump to reconsider pulling troops out of Syria. Senator Graham is seen as a close ally of Mr. Trump, but he says pulling out of Syria will prove to be the same mistake President Barack Obama made in withdrawing US troops from Iraq. He also says withdrawing from Afghanistan could ultimately lead to an attack similar to the September 11 terror attacks. The comments come as US politicians deal with the resignation of Defense Secretary Jim Mattis over policy disagreements with Mr. President Trump. House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi says the loss of General Mattis is a sad day for the United States, and she praised his role in the job.
Because of his leadership, we are safe, and we have to continue to make sure the American people are sure we're safe. That's the oath of office we take to protect and defend, and we will. We shouldn't have to do so because of the temper tantrums of the Commander-in-Chief.
A damning report into Parklea Corrections Centre has found Corrective Services New South Wales failed to exercise proper governance over the scandal-ridden prison and its private operator. An upper house inquiry was set up last year after a video emerged on YouTube showing an inmate flaunting weapons and drugs at the facility in Sydney's northwest. The inquiry found the prison's former operators, GEO Group, failed to address serious and systemic problems with security and contraband at the centre. It also condemns corrective services for allowing problems to escalate to crisis point before intervening. A man has drowned near Coffs Harbour on the New South Wales mid-north coast after 3 other drownings at the same beach this week. Paramedics say the man, believed to be in his 60s, was pulled from the water at Moonee Beach after midday but couldn't be resuscitated. 3 men drowned at the unpatrolled beach earlier this week, and 3 teenagers were taken to hospital after struggling in the waves. Ambulance Acting Deputy Commissioner Tony Gately says paramedics worked hard to save the man.
Paramedics arrived there and started treating the patient, who was a male in his 30s, and there's also local lifeguards on scene performing CPR. Paramedics did their best to assist that patient. Unfortunately, the patient has passed away.
Police are continuing to search for a 76-year-old bushwalker in Tasmania's far southwest wilderness. James McLean from Flinders Island is more than a week overdue from the 1-month trek. He was last seen on the 12th of November in the Tahuni area. The State Emergency Service and a rescue helicopter are scouring the region. Staying in Tasmania, the owner of a cat found tied up in a bag in a Hobart car park says she's shocked that someone would try to kill her pet. Lucy the cat went missing 10 days ago and was found in a feed bag on Wednesday. It's believed the bag had been in a Rosetta Pharmacy car park for 3 days when nearby workers opened it to discover the animal. Owner Wendy Oldham says Lucy's making a slow recovery.
It's a horrible thing. Yeah, and then what to go through, I just can't. I thought I'd lost my baby, and I feel it's going to take a long time for her to be herself again.
The Victorian Health Department has extended a free vaccination program to try to tackle an outbreak of hepatitis A. 2 people have died and there have been more than 230 confirmed cases of the disease, which has been mostly attributed to male sexual transmission. The Acting Chief Health Officer, Brett Sutton, says 2 free doses of the vaccine will be offered until the end of June to try to stop the disease from spreading to the general population.
It starts with nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, but the really key feature is yellowing of skin and eyes. There's 4 groups of people who inject drugs, people in the prison system, rough sleepers, and men who have sex with men. Even though the numbers are now decreasing, we really want to see it completely snuffed out.
There's been a big spike in the number of fatal aircraft crashes in Australia. Andre Withy reports.
The latest report by the Australian Transport Safety Bureau has found 40 people were killed in aviation incidents in 2017, almost double the number of deaths in the previous year. 14 people were killed in commercial crashes involving fee-paying passengers like charter flights. 21 died in light aircraft incidents like mustering and search and rescues, while 5 people died during recreational flights, including hang gliding. The ATSB says there were no fatalities on large or small commercial airlines, making them the safest way to fly.
Let's turn to the share market now and see what the numbers say, and pretty familiar, but not good. The All Ordinaries in the ASX 200 both down by 0.7% today. The All Ordinaries to 5,533. The ASX 200 5,468. Big falls unfolding elsewhere in the region as well. Shanghai's down more than 1%. The Nikkei by 1.4%. Gold is slipped to $12.58 US. West Texas crude at $45.59 a barrel. And the Aussie dollar just holding on to 71 US cents today. That's finance for now. Let's check Friday sport. Here's Chris Russell.
Thank you, Glenn. The band cricketer Steve Smith says he's not thinking about a leadership role and aims to force his way back into the Australian team once his suspension is up. The 29-year-old has 3 months left to serve of a 1-year ban for his part in the ball tampering scandal in South Africa in March. In a rare media appearance since the incident, just the second time he's spoken since the ball tampering scandal. Of course, the last was when he returned home at Sydney Airport and that tearful, infamous press conference where he at times failed to keep his composure. Such was the drama surrounding, and now this is the first time since the punishment came down, and he says he's happy to play a supporting role now to the Australian incumbent red and white ball captains.
I think Tim Payne's done an exceptional job, and Aaron Finch taking over the one-day side, he's had a tough start to that with the performances of the team, I guess, but you know, if I get back and play under them, I'll do everything I can to help them out and help Australia have success.
To the Women's Big Bash League, and the City Thunder they're 2 runs away from defeating the Hobart Hurricanes in the WBBL match at Manuka Oval. Naomi Stellenberg made 55 of just 39 balls. Rachel Priest also making 40 from 21 balls, 7 fours and a 6 in her innings, but 16.4 overs bowled, so they've still got plenty of time for the 2 required runs. Alex Blackwell at the crease, she's 9 not out. Stephanie Taylor, West Indian captain, at the crease, and she is 18 not out. And City Thunder heading towards a certain victory, and that'll keep them at the top of the WBBL ladder. In football, Tottenham Hotspur are feeling the heat as speculation continues surrounding the future of their manager, Mauricio Pochettino. Spurs boss has been strongly linked with a move to Manchester United in the wake of Jose Mourinho's sacking. Not surprisingly, the question was raised again at Pochettino's weekly press conference overnight in London, and the Spurs media manager wasn't impressed.
We've gone over Manchester United and the manager before. No, anything to do with Manchester United. We've had 48 hours ago the same conversations. I'm not prepared. The manager's answered.